welcome everyone to it's our February Coffee and EVs, but it got rescheduled for early March due to conflicts with the statewide NEVI meetings. So here we are, March 5th, our rescheduled February Coffee and EVs. So I had a couple things down just to kind of kick us off. First probably was the NEVI meetings, and I don't know if anyone had any particular thoughts they wanted to share after attending, or any questions or things that came up after the meeting.
I think the one in Cross Lanes went satisfactorily. Marty got some good press. Channel 3 carried him, as you saw, well, and Channel 8 was also there. So, and I think they were just getting started with these public meetings because they were a little, I guess, rusty. They weren't taking the notes onto a flip chart or whatever. I suggested they do that in the later meetings. Did they do that when you were there, the third one, Robert?
They weren't doing that in the third one that I saw.
It's a shame because people were giving them a lot of comments, and I don't know that anybody was recording them, but.
Amanda, I don't know, what about Morgantown? Were they doing anything different there?
No, they just had cards or something that you could leave a comment.
So,
I mean, it was mostly, my impression was it was pretty much what we had heard before on the online presentation earlier in February or late January, whenever that was. So I didn't really glean a lot of new information. It kind of felt like we were just checking off a box for a requirement for the grant money.
Yeah. And they had one person, and he was on one of the two TV channels that was, they're following it, where he was adamant that you needed on Corridor G going down into Kentucky a DC fast charger there, which I agree with him. It's 4-lane road. It's fairly heavily traveled.
Well, and they did emphasize the survey multiple times in the session I was in, the online survey, and completing that and leaving comments about locations for chargers and phase 2 deployments. So that was, and I've already done the survey. I hope everyone here has done the survey. If you haven't, make sure you do the survey and leave those comments about locations and road segments that should be covered. And to your point, Scott, that was one of the specific comments that I made was, if it has 4 lanes, you obviously expect a certain amount of traffic if it has 4 lanes.
Yep.
Therefore, it should have DC fast charging. And, I understand these, like Corridor G, Corridor H, and Route 19 weren't designated alternative fuel corridors, so they're not part of phase 1, but they should have priority in phase 2 to have some type of DC fast charging.
I made that same comment.
I thought I learned a lot, but it may be just because I was too dumb to pick it up before. But I thought it was very interesting that they emphasized that phase 1 was very restrictive in terms of a mile away from the interstate, every 50 miles, accessible in both directions, power level. And so that they wanted to put things in Corridor G, and the priority was, phase 2 was libraries, schools, and rest stops. But they also had all these corridors, but it's not as restricted. They can put in a 100 kilowatt or a 262.5. So they are going to cover all of that. And only 15 million of our 45 is being spent in phase 1. The disadvantage is they have to finish phase 1 before they can break ground for phase 2. We can plan it, but they can't put a spade in the ground until. And then the second thing that I learned, I didn't know anything at all about that second 2.5 billion for communities. That's not phase 2. That's separate. That's not by population like phase 1 and phase 2 are. Are they calling it phase 3, or are they just calling it all? What is the name for that program where communities can apply and get?
Well, actually, I want to talk. This is another topic I want to talk about tonight, but since we're on it, let me go ahead and share this. So one of the things I want to, on that point that Rick's making, I want to send out something that is talking about NEVI phase 2 and this CFI grant, these discretionary grants from the feds for that. So it's that additional pot of money. It's not running through WVDOT. This is through the feds.
Mm-hmm.
And then also the Tennessee Tech stuff, where they're installing fast chargers and level 2s. And what I'm thinking about is like, let's package that up in an email to just, it's kind of an awareness thing. And I want to distribute that to all of our members. And then if you know municipal leaders at municipalities, county governments, city governments, let's try to get people aware of this stuff if they're not already. I know some places are and are actively pursuing them, but some of the smaller places probably are not. So we want to make sure folks are aware and what their options and opportunities are to try to go after some of this money. So that is something I want us to do. I said I can package it up, just links to all this information. I did talk to DC America, and I assume they were maybe at the other meetings as well. I'm not sure, but they were definitely at my meeting in Martinsburg or Shepherdstown. And there were a couple folks from DC America there. I talked to them briefly about some of this because Nathan had, offered to do some assistance on helping write those applications for cities and counties to go after some of this money. In West Virginia, round 1 of the CFI money has already been awarded. There were no awards in West Virginia. So, round 2 will be coming up for additional monies. WVEAA did write a letter of support for at least one of those. Huntington went after some money, and Rick, I think you were aware of that one. And I'm pretty sure it was this CFI money, and they weren't successful in the first round. So hopefully we can, they'll be more successful in secondary rounds. But we want to get this information out there, make folks aware of it. And if DC America can help out, great. They also mentioned that there is some grant application assistance available through WVU that might be helpful for cities and counties to help go after some of this money. So, it's a lot of, you have to be able to write a really strong application and check off all the boxes that the feds are going to want to see for one of these applications. So to your point, Rick, I think this is the pot of money we're talking about. And I do want to send out something to our list and then have our folks try to get this information out to others who may be interested and be able to benefit from it.
And I think it would benefit that we have some talking points, but don't have a canned message and they get the same message if we make any comments or whatever to everyone if we're writing, but definitely get the local officials to go after this.
I'm going to try to get a contact. One of the things that I want to get before I send that out is, since DC America mentioned that WVU program, or maybe Trina Wafel may know as well, if I can get the contact for that so that we can point folks to that resource to help them write grant applications, if they don't already have, those resources available to them.
I was going, while we were talking about NEVI, the meeting in Charleston, I'm looking at a business card for a Josh Turner who's with Power Up America, and they're in the business of trying to get in some of these infrastructure, the fast charging and everything. I'll send his contact information. Did he come to the one all the way up in?
I don't think he was in Shepherdstown, Amanda. I think you mentioned there were some folks in Morgantown who were kind of infrastructure folks looking for information or bidding opportunities.
Yeah, DC America was there, and there was another, but I wasn't familiar with it. I'm sorry.
I'll send the one to you. I'll just send it out to the whole group, the card.
Okay.
Yeah, Chuck King, the president of Synergy, was at the cross lanes for DC America.
Was he the one that was talking about Corridor G, Rick?
No, he was sitting on the far right of those 3 suits guys in the row ahead of me, or the row that I was in on the left. The next 2 next to me were Power Up America, and then DC America was Chuck King was the next one over. And he was standing up for some of the time, kind of facing the group.
Okay.
I don't think he was talking about Corridor G especially.
Okay. I think the
Yeah, Chuck King was at Shepherdstown, and he also had, I think it was Anna Rittenhouse from DC America with him. So, Rick, I mean, I think that to your comment about the additional pot of money. Any other thoughts or comments on that?
Well, as you all did, I got the email from Pingen about the 4 places they're going to put in Fairmont, Somersville, Hinton, and Williamstown. So I found out the addresses for all of those except for Somersville. And so I left a message on their website, and this very nice lady called me back yesterday from the mayor's office. Her name is Marianne Taylor, and she said they were happy to get this and where they were going to put it and why. And could we, the WVEAA, be a source of question answering if they had questions? And I said, absolutely, that's why we're here. And then I called the mayor's office in Franklin, West Virginia, and spoke to a very nice man there about how they needed to get in on this CFI grant. And they don't need 4 plugs and they don't need 150 kilowatts, but it's where 220 crosses 33 coming in from Harrisonburg. So everybody going to Snowshoe and Dolly Sods, they're all going through Franklin and Brandywine and Oak Flats and Judy Gap. And so they really need that in that location. We talked about a half an hour, and he was very, very interested and was going to pass that on to the mayor and other people. And hopefully they could get a grant person to help them with the grant writing. And maybe in the whatever phase they get it, or whatever level, whatever round, maybe they could get a station for Franklin, West Virginia. And they were kind of excited about it.
Good. I talked to Marty briefly one evening, and I don't know, he wasn't able to make it tonight apparently, but he mentioned the one, I think it was in the one that's near Parkersburg. Is that Williamstown?
That's the airport one.
The airport one, yeah. And I guess he was kind of having some questions about, was that really a good location for a fast charger?
Well, the communities don't necessarily have to ask us. We have nothing to do with our recommendations or whether or not it's needed. They just may want it. So I don't know does anybody know, John, are you familiar with what criteria Dr. Chen and Tennessee Tech used to award these 4? They're all charge point, 2 plug, 125 kilowatt shared, 62.5 per. And then it's going to be in those 4 places. One of them was the airport. They must have put in an application for that, and they won.
All I know is that they wanted them in places that NEVI wouldn't necessarily cover.
Right.
Marty was concerned that there wasn't enough actual traffic that would need fast charging at the airport. Maybe it would have been a better choice for like level 2 or something. But
I agree.
The one in Fairmont is in downtown Fairmont. It is away from the interstate. You have to traverse into downtown, which is basically one-way streets. It's not a very pleasant location, but it's near, I believe, like the state police barracks, maybe. So it maybe at least be secure.
It's at the Transit Authority, the bus terminal. Yeah.
Yes.
But they don't care whether there's a lot of traffic. They just would like to have, another charger there in the town. And we're going to need the other thing, Robert, that they emphasized again is that this NEVI program, phase 1 and phase 2, are going to provide fewer than 10% of the chargers we need in West Virginia. They're still looking for Pilot, Travel Center, and others to put up the other 90%.
Oh, definitely.
And if we have 15 plugs in Fairmont or in Flatwoods, that's probably good.
Yeah, that's going to be a common place to stop, so that's good. But it just from Tennessee Tech, with the resources that they have to deploy in West Virginia, it's like I would like to see like that. We're talking about putting something in a place in Parkersburg that isn't necessarily the greatest location. Where, hey, what about Franklin, West Virginia, and covering those major routes? I would rather see something like that.
Because you don't think they'd get it through the CFI program, or why would you?
Well, just so that it would be. We don't know that they will get anything through CFI. They may never get anything through CFI. But Tennessee Tech, if we've got a lock on a certain amount of funds to deploy fast chargers in West Virginia, I'd like to get them in the places that make the most sense and will have the most bang for the buck sooner.
Yeah, I don't know what criteria they use, but that 4, John, do you know? I don't think more than 4. They're going to have a number of AC level 2s, but I thought 4 of DC fast chargers was going to be all that they were going to
Well,
do.
that's what I'm afraid of. Is that we're gonna shoot our whole 4, and they're not going to necessarily go in very good locations.
But they didn't ask any of us. Did they ask
And
you?
I would have no. They've never asked me anything, and I wouldn't be able to weigh in personally on, like, say, Williamstown and the airport area. I would defer to, like, John Ayers and Marty and folks who are familiar with that area and the traffic, and what is it close to? Is it close to a major route? Is it going to have enough people visiting it to make it worth the money it's going to take to install it? And John, I think you had a comment on the airport one.
Yeah, the airport is it's kind of centrally located on Route 31 between Williamstown exit off of 77 and Route 2, which they're working on 4-laning Route 2, which goes past my house, and that's going to go all the way to Wheeling eventually. But there is better locations up here to put it. So,
well, I guess that's I don't know. And maybe Rick, next time you talk to them, I don't know if there's any, of course, if they've already committed, they've committed, and it is what it is. But it would have been nice, I guess, if they would have had some, I guess one of their criteria would be nice if you kind of weigh in with the folks on the ground who might be able to help guide better site selection.
Yeah, they'll be here April the 10th. And they're going to bring the 3rd vehicle to West Virginia at the deed. But we'll try to bring up the conversation. How did you happen to choose those places? And would you like any? We had some other suggestions. Would you want to hear them, or are you all? They may say we're all out of funds for DC.
Yeah,
but that's not terribly expensive to put in a 62.5. I mean, it's under 65,000, I think.
And I think they have a lot of money.
Well, it's just I would, since the CFI stuff is great, but none of it's guaranteed. It's all competitive,
mm-hmm.
And West Virginia didn't get anything in the first round. We're not guaranteed to get anything in the second round.
Do we even know how many applications were made? We don't even know that.
We don't know from West Virginia specifically. No, I know there were some, but I don't know how many.
Because that lady from Nitro, Scott, wasn't that lady that came in late and said she was going to do him on Nitro, and he said, "You're not even in phase 1. You're a different plane. You applied for the CFI grant."
But she made the contact, and they're going to definitely be a motivated community to do it in phase 2 or whatever the phase 3 is called.
Yeah, I don't know if phase 3 is called phase 3 or not. It's just CFI as far as I know.
Yeah,
and they say it's not phase 3. It's not. This is already running. This is running concurrently with NEVI. There might be CFI stuff deployed in West Virginia before any NEVI stuff gets installed.
Yeah,
I wouldn't be surprised. Yeah,
it wouldn't surprise me at all.
I made the point to talk to the guys about 250 into Virginia, being how Elkins would be the last stop for me. So I pointed that out. I also talked to the guy from the Federal Department of Transportation and asked him specifically about Corridor H, and he said 10 years. So I was displeased about that. But I said, and while we were on the topic, I said in phase 2, Alderson Broadus College was on there, and it is now privately owned by a businessman. So they need to take that one off, and it could be put somewhere else. So,
John, you got your hand up.
Yeah, as far as Corridor H goes, that makes me think that we ought to maybe approach travel and tourism about helping those communities write those grants to get that in there in Elkins. When you think about travel and all the ski resorts and everything, it makes perfect sense to have that in Elkins or something maybe in Parsons.
Well, I talked to the guys up here, Perry, Keller, about that. It's like Corridor H has got to have something. I mean, if you're coming from Virginia or Northern Virginia and Maryland, and you're coming across to the ski areas, you need something, at a Moorfield or at Davis and Thomas, Canaan, somewhere. You got to have something there. And there's just no excuse for not having DC fast charging there.
I know one of Robert Byrd's thing that he did several years before he died was to improve Route 33 all the way from Harrisonburg, and took around some of those curves were so hairpin. But 250 is still a disaster. There are people in Stanton who will go all the way up to Harrisonburg, across to into West Virginia, and then back down, rather, to 28 or to Marlinton or Snowshoe, rather than go across 250, because it's just a nauseating drive, and it's not.
Yeah, the closest one for me was Front Royal, Virginia, after crossing into.
And that's much very north, yeah.
Yeah. And we do have a couple of folks on the call I do want to recognize. I just saw Greg Ianello, and I hope I'm pronouncing that right. Greg, I know you've tried to join a few times, and I know your work prevents you from joining, so glad to have you with us. And Greg's a relatively new Model Y owner, and I think he had a couple plug-in hybrids previously. And Greg, I don't know if you want to say anything, or I don't want to put you on the spot. But anyway, otherwise, we've got, who was it? Joe Webb. And I think John Averill, you mentioned Joe might be joining.
There we go.
I don't know if Joe wants to tell his brief bio.
Or Greg, are you on now, Greg?
I think I got my mic working now.
Okay, yeah, we can hear you.
Okay. Yeah, I've still got my RAV4 Prime, and then I have a Model Y.
All right, how many miles you got on the Model Y now?
A little over 8,000.
You're about with me.
I finally got that water in the trunk resolved. Took a second trip. I went to Cincinnati this time. They fixed it. They kept my car for 2 days, so they gave me a Model 3 loaner to drive home in, and they didn't tell me that it was a sport package. It had the acceleration boost in it.
Yeah.
And when my buddy and I hit the interstate, it about put him through the floor. And then the next day, when I turned the car on, Tesla had modified it. It said, your top speed is now limited to 85.
Troublemaker. All right, well, glad to have you with us, Greg. And we also have Joe Webb here. And Joe, did you want to give us a brief bio and maybe kind of what you're looking for or hoping to get out of the meeting?
Well, John and I spoke, and we met today, and we discussed some things, and we're hoping to actually get a try out at an electric vehicle, and we're hoping to utilize some of our spaces we have to maybe set up a charging station. There's one in Fayetteville, and I actually looked at it today. I didn't go by, but one of the concerns was the rate of the charging, and John and I kind of spoke about it. Then just kind of getting up to date on some of this stuff, and we've been doing with the Department of Energy on some other grants with Solar for All and a few things. So I was just kind of, this is new to me, the NEVI and this new other funding that might be coming, and we would just like to stay on top of it and see what we can do to benefit our area right here in Fayette County.
Want to mention your organization then?
Yeah, I'm with the Southern Appalachian Labor School, and John, David, and John and I all met and spoke today, and so we're pretty. We've been around since, I think it's since the late '70s, and I've been involved on and off since 2001 when I was in college at Tech in Montgomery. So, and I know I was telling John I went to a county commission meeting where they got some concerns about the charging stations, people not having adequate, ability to keep charged when they rent a car or drive through our state. And we're right on 77 and Route 19 is a very used and utilized route. And since we just became, the 63rd National Park, we're going to have a lot of people coming and driving from Charlotte and different airports, Pittsburgh, right around the area. So.
All right. Well, welcome, and hopefully we can get you some information. And John can definitely make sure you get hooked up.
Thank you. Yeah, it's a lot to absorb. It's all kind of new to me. So.
I hope I didn't miss anyone else. Do we have anyone else? Let's join. I think that's all the new faces anyway. And Rick, did you have a question?
Well, I'm changing topics, and I'll be happy to defer it. But some of y'all are Tesla experts, and I'm not. But my wife was reading today that their stock went down 7% yesterday and 5% more because of that arson terrorism at Giga Berlin. Is that mean we ought to go out and buy some Tesla stock, or are they going to go under because of the sabotage?
Well,
they lost market cap of 26 billion in 2 days.
Well, I mean, their capitalization is still like, I don't know what, 600 billion or something. So
26 billion is only 0.5 of 1%.
I mean, Tesla is a very volatile from a stock perspective, yeah, which we probably don't want to get into here. But yeah, it's a volatile stock, and you need to be able to handle the ups and downs.
Yeah.
All right. So the other thing. Oh, did somebody have a question?
I was just going to say that, amen to the volatility, and it's not going out of business, Rick.
Yeah, not anytime soon. All right. So we talked about the NEVI meetings. We've talked about the other grant programs. I wanted to bring those things up tonight. Then the other topic that I wanted to bring up, or at least we can start discussing a little bit more, is there's been this idea that we would like to have some type of an event that is, I don't want to call it a rally per se, but kind of like a rally. And it would be some type of a driving event with to showcase electric vehicles traveling through or across West Virginia. We had looked at, there was a 24 Hours of Appalachia event that we were initially talked about, but it turned out to be more of a some more extreme off-roading kind of stuff. So hardcore Jeep folks and, things like that. Special equipment, special training, special vehicles, modified vehicles.
And endurance to see who doesn't get stuck out in the woods.
Yeah, apparently. So that's not really what we were looking for. So we've been kind of playing around with some ideas. I came up with some ideas. I know Rick's put some thought into it as well with some ideas. What James say? Scavenger hunt? Well, and actually that's kind of where I was kind of going with some of my thoughts. So we wanted to kind of bring that up. I mean, I wouldn't mind making this something larger than just our group and trying to publicize it a bit. And, even if we could get some backing, either from like Clean Cities or, I don't know, the National Association or other folks, a dealership that was more progressive. To do to set up something like this that's a little more real and involve folks. And I would like to, get other electric vehicle associations, especially on the East Coast, involved and see if we could get them to participate. So we're, the general parameters we're thinking about, like, it would have to be in a day, so 24 hours or less. And, the mileage could vary depending on the route we want to take. But the general my thought was probably, around 500 miles in a day. And it's got to have some level of challenge to it. 400 to 500 miles probably. And traveling from border to border, east to west or west to east. And so I think Rick and I were both kind of on the same ballpark with that. Starting from, I'm thinking from the Potomac River to the Ohio River. So you're from the Shepherdstown, Harpers Ferry kind of area over to the Huntington area. And obviously you could choose different routes to get there. And you would have some landmarks, things that you would have to do to prove that you had made all the stops. And generally it would be probably photographic based. And each team would have something unique with them that they would have to have in the photos to prove that they were there. That was kind of my thought. And it would be like a timer so you could see how long they've been traveling to kind of prove out where you've been. And there'd also need to be photos of the screen of the car, miles traveled, efficiency of the vehicle. And there'd be categories and points for, how many stops you made, how efficiently you drove, all those kinds of things. So that's kind of the general parameters of it. It's nothing that I would want that we need a lot of folks to run. That's the other thing, because we don't. I mean, if you have typically these rallies, you've got checkpoints, and those have to be manned. And that gets into a little more personnel. You got to have people that are available to do that. So my thought was we wouldn't have personnel at checkpoints. You've got this sort of like a scavenger hunt, proving that you were there and what time you were there. And we would really only staff the beginning and the end points for like taking off in the morning and the arrival. One other thought I had was just trying to, because you've got folks, if you live on the western, like if you lived in Ohio or Kentucky, and it would be a long drive to get over to like Shepherdstown and then drive all the way back to Huntington, but then you're home. That's great. But if you're on the eastern side of the state, it's the opposite problem. You get to the finish line and now you're hours still from home. So my thought was you basically run the event in both directions at the same time. So you have a start in Huntington and a start in Shepherdstown at the same time, and then you've got teams traveling east and teams traveling west, but it's the same route, same objectives. The only downside to that is not everybody's together all at once, either to start or end. That's the only thing I don't like about it, but there's going to have to be some pros and cons. But anyway, I wanted to put that out there again as just sort of another take on an event like that and try to get people's thoughts and impressions, interest in participating in something like that. Before we opened it up, though, to other clubs or to a wider audience, I think I would like to see us do it internally and do a pilot run to kind of get, what works, what doesn't work. Is there problems with this format that we could foresee? So any comments, thoughts, interest on that? Would people like to do something like that? I think John's got John, you got your hand up?
Yeah, here's one idea to take or leave, but do a Pony Express where we have maybe 5 people, 10 people, whatever, and they're the ones that have to go from one end to the other, but they ride in different cars. So they'll be leaving in a certain car and they'll hit a certain stop and change cars. They'll get into a fully charged car and go on for the next run. And that way everybody could go together. So we'd have different stopping points. You've got a fully charged car there. You hop out of the one and go on the other one. The other car charges up and maybe they take it on the way back or something. Anyway.
Okay.
That's one idea. I just worry because all the cars have to charge at the same time pretty much. And with the limited charging in our state, we couldn't all run together.
Well, and in a way, I mean, I hear what you're saying. In a way, though, if you basically give folks the objectives, and my thought was you've got some alternate objectives as well. So basically, you plan your own route. Not everybody's going to necessarily take the same route. You have to. There's some element, just like the Cannonball Run. Really, you choose the route you want to take. Is it the northern route, the southern route? You choose that. All those kinds of things. Do I hit this objective first or this one? And do I go for this bonus objective over here? Is it worth the points? So, it would require some, and maybe I'm making it too complicated. I'm thinking it would be to have a strategy on, competing, and you would be up to, you'd have to formulate your strategy. Like I could do this one thing, but I'm going to have to travel on the interstate and that's going to cut into my range. So maybe I want to do this other thing on a back road instead. That kind of stuff. And as far as my thought is that people would take the same, I mean, you probably, if it's going to be your vehicle, and from an insurance and liability standpoint, we got to be careful about, some of those kinds of things. And of course, there would have to be a waiver signed before you would participate in something like this. That you're going to obey the rules of the road and drive safely, and and in my version of points, you were penalized heavily if you speeded. And basically, if you arrive before a possible time, you lose so many points, it's just impossible to win. To discourage that kind of behavior. Would anyone like to do that?
I would definitely like to not by myself do it, but
Well, yeah, I mean a team. I mean
I'd like to help with the effort for sure.
Okay. James, did you have your hand up?
No, I was just like raising my hand that I was interested in it.
Oh, you're interested in participating or helping. Okay.
I think Marty was interested in it.
I'd be interested in participating.
Well, I think we probably have enough folks interested in our own group to participate, to at least do this like a trial run and see
Yeah, like
how
a
it
proof
works.
of concept.
Proof
kind
of
of thing.
concept. And see if it works and what the problems are before you open it up to a wide.
It's, you know, making sure the different routes we plan are, you know, doable based on, oh no, both these chargers are down, I'm out.
And you know, I mean, in a way, it's also, I mean, I would want it to be real. I mean, that you have to plan. There is an element of risk, and you know, is the charger going to be working? You know, kind of thing. If I'm going to use this level 2 at a campground, did I call ahead and make sure it was working? Kind of stuff.
Well, a campground's going to have lots of options.
Yeah, I mean, it shouldn't be a problem, but I mean, some of the ones I'm thinking of over in the Canaan, Elkins area, I've seen campgrounds that say they've got one 1450 for electric vehicles to use.
Yeah.
And so if that was your planned stop, you know, you better plan properly.
And I've had some people tell me that some campgrounds do not want them pulling that much power on their 1450.
Mm-hmm.
I'm only level 2, and I'm halfway between y'all.
Well, and that's something I would think about. Can you call and say, I want to reserve that when I come through town, or are you just taking a chance when you get there and somebody else is plugged up?
Well, most of those are first come, first serve,
Yeah.
but you could try to call ahead to make sure that it's working and available. Now, they're not going to reserve it, for a time slot generally. So you'd want to have plan A and plan B. Okay. Well, I think we've probably got enough folks who are interested. What we could probably do is maybe do a side group who's interested in maybe planning something like this and taking multiple, maybe we could look at some different concepts. Because I know Rick had some ideas that he'd put down. I've got some. I'm sure other folks, if you've ever participated in something like this, you may have some other thoughts on what's worked in the past. Rick, was there anything you want to add to that, or any other thoughts?
Yeah, a couple. I don't want to take up everybody's time, but I don't see any advantage in going two directions, because if you start at home and end at home, you're going to go the same distance anyway, whether I drive the Ohio River or the other one. So we might as well all, go have maybe the night before, we'll have a nice dinner, and we all start at 15-minute intervals from the Potomac River and whatever. Your program and mine were very different. Mine was set up with the exact same route. The route is designated where you have to go the same distance, and totally based on efficiency, not based on speed at all. And mine said 24 hours like yours did. Mine said you had to take 1 8-hour break for a nap and charging, or 2 4. And because we know that if you do find a DC fast charger, they're so much faster if you're lower than 25% or lower than 50%. That's the calculation you need to put into. I don't want to stop now. I want to go a little bit further. So I was thinking we would probably get some people would stop at Marlinton, my halfway point, for a bed and breakfast for 8 hours and then get back on the road. But it was totally based on efficiency and not. I'm not sure you want to base it on speed. I know you want to put it.
I didn't base it on speed. I want to base it on time at arrival. You have to balance time efficiency and vehicle efficiency. That was my concept.
And the other thing is all the RV parks and KOA campgrounds have multiple 1450s. They're all set up for an RV. Now, campgrounds don't, but RV parks do. And you probably could call and say how many of those. Well, we got 52 places. It's going to cost you $10 to plug in. Well, can I plug in and charge AC level? And maybe you're not going to need for. My trip was only 473 miles, And so that's probably charging once in the middle or twice based on how you think you're going to be the most efficient. And we'd keep track of how many miles per kilowatt hour you got. But yeah, just different thoughts.
Yeah, I'm sure we're going to have lots of different opinions. All right. Well, so it sounds like we have enough interest to probably, like I said, form a group, like a focus group to kind of sketch it out better from these rough ideas. And then James had a couple comments. All right. Well, if you are interested in working on something like that, drop me an email, and then we'll set up, like I said, a sort of a subgroup to kind of work on that. And the thought, as far as timing, my thought was if we want to do like a pilot run of this, whatever we come up with, is do it sometime this summer.
Mm-hmm.
And then Amanda, you'll have your Ford adapter by then, and you can use the superchargers.
Now, Robert, were you saying the trial run this summer, or the trial run in the spring and the whole thing at the end?
No, I'm thinking we just do a trial run this summer, and then probably do the more official one, probably a next year type event, or the fall. I mean, if it works out well, we do early summer. It works, we tweak it, and then maybe if we did something in the fall, early fall, maybe do something around the leaf changing in early October or mid-October, so you can get to see some sightseeing while you're driving.
The other requirement I had is that one person couldn't do all the driving and the other would be the navigator. You couldn't have more than a 60-40 split in time, not in miles, but each of the people had to be able to drive the EV. And that was just, I don't know, it was just a thought. Maybe say no, have one person drive the whole 24 hours without sleeping and have the other guy do the navigation, or girl, or whatever.
You know, Rick, that sounds like a pretty good built-in kind of safety feature too, due to fatigue and all that. So, that's worth considering.
I mean, no, I would, this needs to be a team effort. Definitely. You can't do this alone. And I mean, I think it would make sense that, both folks can drive and should be able to drive the EV, should swap off.
And maybe not required of a certain way, not mandate it, but expect that they would do that.
I mean, we could mention it that, the expectation is that you have multiple team members and you share driving duty so that one driver is not, overly tired, or, however we want to word that. I don't know if we made a specific requirement, but I mean, because I don't know if you make something a requirement, then you have to enforce it. And I don't know that we could enforce it.
Right.
Okay. Well, anyway, sounds like there's enough interest that we can get together and plan something. And, part of the planning may also be the timing of it. Do we think we could put something together sooner? I mean, I think if we go beyond our group, then you got to have enough time to publicize it and figure out the logistics of, registrations and how you're going to run all. And then it gets into all the other bits and pieces you have to have for an event like this. And
you may need to, if you get over subscription, talking about the chargers and everything, you may have to limit it to a certain.
I think we will have to limit it. I mean, if we got a big interest, we would definitely have to limit it. But I think we may want to limit it anyway, because I like the other event that we talked about. They limited their entrance.
Yeah,
I think they only allowed, I don't know, was it 40 or 50 folks to participate.
Yeah. What kind of a prize for the winner? Certificate?
Yeah. What is the prize?
Gift card.
Gift card.
I know a place that I can get trophies made if anybody's interested in that.
I think 100 gallons of gasoline free would be the way.
How about
Biscuit World.
That's a lot of lawnmower.
I was going to bring up 1,000 supercharging miles, or 600 to match.
I like James suggested, because on my kind of write up, I wanted to hit West Virginia themed things, like there's got to be a stop at a Tudor's Biscuit World. There's got to be a stop at a Pies and Pints. There's got to be a stop at like the Custard Stand and the Flatwoods Monster and the Mothman Museum in Point Pleasant. You got to work in all those kind of West Virginia kind of things.
But if you do that too much, will you not get people from Ohio and Pennsylvania, or they think that'll be unique and they want to try it that way?
I mean, my thought is that it's
Dealer's
it's
choice,
a West
man.
Virginia event. You're gonna be immersed in West Virginia culture.
The best pepperoni roll is in Buchanan.
That's right. You got to buy a pepperoni roll on the trip.
Them's fighting words. But you could even do like the, this would be great publicity for being what an EV can do within our state.
And thank you for bringing that up, John. I mean, that's really the point of something like this. We hope we can get some publicity from the press, local coverage, and maybe beyond that says, hey, look what these folks did crossing West Virginia. You think you got it bad with chargers, look what these folks were able to do in less than 24 hours driving across West Virginia.
I have the contacts for the news. The guy who came who covered the Morgantown NEVI meeting, he's like, I really want to do a story. He said, can I drive it? No, you can't drive it, but I'll be happy to do a story for you. And so he's begging for a story on EVs.
All right. Well, maybe there's a nibble there we could take advantage of.
We got to get on our rural reimagine list and borrow a car for 2 weeks.
John, you're hard to hear.
Really?
Yeah, you are kind of muffled, John.
Huh. I don't know what's going on.
Or if you don't, maybe if you got a mic on that headset, you might need to select that mic.
No, it's separate. I got a big mic here.
Oh, okay.
I don't know what's wrong.
Well, you're better now, I guess, as you lean forward.
I just turned it up, lean forward.
Yeah, okay.
I've got another issue I wanted to bring up when we're done with this.
Go ahead. We're done.
Okay. ATVs, electric ATVs. I don't know if you all know, but if you want to put one on the road, like, ATVs you can put on the road now with the proper inspection, insurance, registration. Electric ATVs are $200 more, just like cars, but you're not allowed to drive them on 4-lane roads, on interstates, anything like that. You still have to pay the same extra $200. So it's really a deterrent to getting an electric ATV. I mean, side by side, whatever. I have one, and I'm not about to pay $200 to, registration on that to run on the roads. I just think the legislation ought to be changed on that. It shouldn't be that high. They're not the same as electric cars.
Well, it ought to not be. Their hybrids pay $75 more. They're totally gasoline. They're just more efficient. We should penalize a person that has a 4-cylinder engine because it's more efficient than a V8. Now, that doesn't make any sense to make hybrids pay more. They're not. It's just every mile they put on the highway, they're paying with gasoline.
John, do you know what the fee is for a standard gas ATV?
I can't remember whether it's $50 or less for an ATV. It might be less. I'd have to look back at the law, but I looked up the code the other day, the rules on how to register one.
$75 to $100.
Pardon? It's no.
I believe it's like $75 to $100.
No, it's 50 at max, just like a regular car, but I think it might even be less.
We paid it to the
anyway.
city.
The regulation, I think, is just inflated for an EV, and it's a real deterrent for buying an electric ATV.
I don't know that I've ever. I see them on the roads. I see them on the roads occasionally, but I know you're supposed to register them and have the tags and everything, but I don't know that I've ever seen tags on any of them.
Mm-hmm.
I see 5 or 6 all the time up here in Parkersburg.
And they have the tags and everything on them?
They have the tags, and I know a couple people who've done it. But I just don't see the appeal of it, because if I'm in the backwoods of Ritchie County, West Virginia, and I want to go from the cabin up to my cousin's, and I had one, I wouldn't even think twice about even driving it on those old gravel dirt roads, having tags on it. I guess that's just my rebel.
Yeah. But anyway, $200 a year, that's a real deterrent. But I guess, yeah, you can just forget it and risk it. Probably the ticket would be less than the registration.
As long as you keep it to one ticket or less a year, right? All right. Any other comments from anyone or news items or anything? I guess, the big news item last week or so has been, of course, that Ford started shipping the adapter out for folks to use.
Well, I'll say, oh, sorry, Thornton, you go ahead since you raised your hand.
Yeah, I finally hit the 100,000 mile mark on my odometer on my Prius Prime.
All right.
So
100K.
I bought that in 2017 and had no idea I'd actually be able to charge it electrically. And I found that we had all these charging stations around the mound, and I started using one. I saw Marty, some other people, and that's how I got involved with WVEAA in the summer of 2017.
All right, awesome.
That's it.
James, did you want to add something?
I was just going to say the big news item for, as far as I know today, well, going back a couple of days, Rivian said, they would be shipping out their chargers to customers soon and get access to the Tesla supercharger network by the end of March. So we'll see if the rollout is on schedule. But the big news from today out of Stellantis, they showed off working prototypes of their Dodge Charger two-door EV, and they had a artistic model of the four-door one debuted today, and they said production and deliveries, or production starting soon. First deliveries on dealerships by the end of summer, I think they said. So that's pretty ambitious, I think.
It is.
On the
I guess,
oh, go ahead.
The Marmette supercharger is apparently open now with it's 250 kW with 12 stalls, they say. That'll take a lot of pressure off of the Charleston.
That's good. And Mark, did you have something to add?
Yeah, just John's comment got me a little curious about registration fees and different things, and maybe the group has already thought about that, and it's definitely a little late in this legislative session, but next year coming up, I don't know, in the fall or whenever. I mean, do we start thinking about what kind of legislation we can lobby for, or get and start talking to our legislators and things we really want to make a priority for EV use and electric charging here in West Virginia.
Well, and going back, a couple of years probably, Mark, when the new registration fees went into effect, I mean, we did, talk about it a lot at that point, and encourage folks to talk to their representatives about that fee and making changes to it. I mean, we as an organization don't have any type of lobbying specifically capability. It's just our members and reaching out to their representatives to express their opinions on certain legislation or what we'd like to see. The one thing that and we even put out a position statement, it's on our website, about it, is we would like to see basically like a use fee for all vehicles. That's the only fair way that there seems to be able to do that. Now, of course, implementing something like that is not, you just don't wave your wand and make that happen. And no state has done usage fees that I'm aware of yet. But as for the point that like Rick was making, fuel revenues from liquid fuels are going to continue to decline as vehicles get more efficient, whether it's electrics, hybrids, plug-in hybrids, or just flat out more efficient gasoline powered vehicles. And we are not capturing, they won't be capturing the same amount of revenue. So you got to make up for that somehow if you're going to keep bringing in the same amount of revenue. So it doesn't look like they're not on a sustainable path. There's going to have to be a change at some point if more and more vehicles move away from liquid fuels. I mean, it's inevitable, or you're going to have to find a new way to support roads. Go ahead, Rick.
Yeah, I just wanted to mention briefly that I have an acquaintance, not a good friend, who's a mechanical engineer for Lucid, and we've invited him to come to one of our coffee and EVs. And Marty's already have a couple invites out, so we can't invite Harry until the other person says when they're coming. But in the next month or so, we hope to have this mechanical engineer for Lucid Motors be a guest with us for 15 or 20 minutes. That'd be pretty cool. Yeah. And when is the next meeting? Are we going to still have a second one in March now?
Yeah, we're still on for March.
Good.
And we are getting close to our hour here. So it will be, I was hoping it would be the very end of March, but actually it looks like it'll be the 26th. The last Tuesday of March.
I'd love to.
And I don't want to, and back to Mark's point though, I mean, Mark brings up a good point as far as the legislative sessions. I know we're kind of this session's pretty much done, but for next year, if we want to make a more concerted effort, and maybe it is time to revisit the fees again and express, our concerns and displeasure with that and I really want to, you have to be careful how you frame this, because it's not like EV owners are looking for a free ride. And I really want to be careful about that. And the way our position statement was stated previously, it was like, we understand that there's a need for maintenance and roads, and we support that. And EV owners want to pay their share, but we want to pay our share and not more than gas-powered vehicles. So we have to be careful how we state those things and make the case that as vehicles get more efficient, revenues will continue to decline. So we have to, the states need to think about how they're going to fund roads going forward as more vehicles move away from liquid fuels or use less liquid fuels. And I'll get off that soapbox. But thanks, Mark, for bringing that up.
Oh, hey, Robert. Glad to do it. And I'm here in Charleston, and certainly, I work downtown and very close to the State House. And while I'm certainly not an eloquent speaker by any means, certainly willing to go down to the Capitol during the legislative session and try to talk to any delegate or senator that may want to listen and at least get a little bug in their ear about things. So.
No, appreciate that. And let me send you a link to at least what we talked about before and sort of like the statement that was written. And you can take a look at that, and maybe, we can start thinking about, again, I know it's late for this year, but we can start thinking about stuff for next year. Larry, do you have something?
Well, just a little bit of statistics on how many vehicles and the impact of them worldwide. But I asked the internet how many electric vehicles there were, and at the end of 23, it says there's 26 million electric vehicles. You assume that they travel. We travel more than that in the United States, but that's, say, 10,000 miles each. That ends up being 260 trillion miles. And if you assume 25 miles to the gallon displacement, that's 260. That's 10.4 trillion gallons of gas. And if you figure $3 a gallon, there's about $31 trillion that the oil companies are not getting now a year. If I did that right.
Yeah, it's a lot of money, no matter how you slice it.
Yep.
And Scott, did you have something? I know we need to wrap up here, but any last words?
I was just I don't mean to, just be real careful at the legislature, because I was working with a couple solar organizations at trying to get some stuff through, and we had some meetings, but it didn't do much. You know, they have their, you know, the legislators pretty much at the start know what they want to do, and it's hard to steer the ship differently. So we should try it, but just don't get your hopes too high. Go ahead, John.
Quick note on the ATVs. They are electric ATVs are something that hunters kind of like because they're so quiet. And I think that would be the way to go at it and say, it's not fair to us hunters, you know. But and I agree with Mark. Go with the next session, and if you guys read the letter of the, I can't remember the details. I think it's $200 more than the registration for gas ATVs. Plus these.
I mean, so it sounds like just like the vehicles.
It's really unfair, I think, since they can't drive. There's no way they're going to spend that much gas tax with an ATV, because one thing, you're just not on the road that much, and you're limited from so many of the roads. You're not allowed on them, so it just doesn't make sense. So I think it's a case that some legislator would embrace, who's not necessarily an EV advocate. It might be a good workaround.
You might have more luck there.
Yeah. All right. Well, we're about 5 after, so thanks everyone for coming out. And we are on for March 26th as our next Coffee and EVs. And so we will see everyone there. And it said if you're interested in working on the planning for some type of rally event, then drop me your name and in an email, and we'll set up a separate meeting to kind of talk about that.
Is there also a members meeting on April 9th?
Yes. Let me look. Yeah, second Tuesday in April will be the members meeting, that April 9th. All right. Thanks, everyone. Have a good one.
Thank you.
All right.
Have a good night.
Thanks, everybody.